We're happy, as always, to be joined by the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Lots of things to talk to Craig Lally about. Mr. Lally, happy Monday. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be on your show, Larry.
Well, listen, let's start with LeBron James. Listen, we've both lived in Southern California for a very, very long time. I go all the way back to the Showtime era. With I actually, Magic Johnson and I moved from Michigan to Southern California at the same time. So I followed Magic, and I've been a huge Lakers fan. Very hard to wrap my arms around this Lakers team, especially with the most recent behavior of LeBron James. But you guys have something to say about it over there at the Protective League. Tell me what's going on.
Well, we sent a letter to Adam Silver, who's the NBA commissioner, because the league was disgusted with LeBron James' tweet against the Columbus police officer who basically was involved in a tragic accident, and he had to make a split-second life-or-death decision to intervene and protect an innocent young lady from being stabbed to death. I listened to some of those radio calls that were coming in from citizens. Individual citizens were there screaming that you better get the police here, somebody's going to die, and basically they were very scared that a young lady was going to get stabbed to death by another individual who happened to be a young lady also.
Yeah, it sure. I mean, listen, there's going to be an investigation here, Craig Lally, but from the face of it, it sure looks like these police officers, the Columbus police, and certainly the one who had to make that life and death split-second decision and use lethal force, he saved this young girl's life. He saved a young black girl's life from being stabbed to death. That seems like on the face of it exactly what happened here. What did LeBron James do?
Well, he decided to tweet to his 50 million followers sending a picture of the Columbus police officer to his followers and basically telling them that he was next. And that infuriated us. We decided to send a letter to the NBA. And mind you, the reason why I'm so upset, and our board members, is that LeBron James is a hypocrite. I grew up just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and I followed LeBron since he was playing high school for St. Vincent St. Mary. And I know from the day he became an NBA player, he was protected by off-duty Cleveland police officers throughout the state of Ohio. Currently, as a Laker, he has off-duty police officers working for him at his residence. So on one side is he's basically calling out a police officer that just got, like I said, in a circumstance that was way beyond his control, and then made a split-second decision. And on the other side of the coin is him and his family is protected by police officers.
Wow. And so do you believe that this tweet and he has deleted the tweet, but the only response he's given after deleting this tweet was that he was angry. We're all angry now and again, Craig Lally, right? Do you think that tweeting out this police officer's picture and saying "you're next," do you think that put police officers' lives in danger?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he was angry. We all get angry, like you said. There's not a day that I walk in this office and something doesn't upset me by either local politicians across the country, and I get upset. But I would never send out especially with he had no information on what had happened, absolutely none, because a rational person looking at this incident is not going to come to the conclusion that he did.
Right. Craig Lally is the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and that organization has sent a letter to the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver. And it's been a little over a week since LeBron James did this. First of all, why the wait? Were you hoping that LeBron on his own would come forward and say something here? And so number one, why the wait on your letter to Adam Silver? And secondly, what do you want the NBA to do about this?
Well, first of all, I want the NBA to look into their policy, and if they even have a social media policy. And I know for a fact that police officers on or off duty are held responsible for the content of their media posts, and their punishment can be suspension, demotion, or even termination. So that's what happens to police officers if they do something stupid on social media. And I'm not surprised that he hasn't responded back. I don't think he ever will and apologize, because that's not he's not going to cave into the other side, which is Black Lives Matter, and he's not going to admit that he made a mistake, and that's why it's taken so long, and I think he will never apologize. And that's another problem I really have with him is this is an obvious one. This is this is a softball to him to apologize for this and for this incident. This is such an easy decision for him. Yet it's been a couple weeks and he hasn't responded.
You know, Craig Lally, you'd be interested to know that it was just 1 month ago, April 2nd, when the NBA fined Kevin Durant, a superstar now with the Brooklyn Nets. The NBA fined Kevin Durant $50,000 for using, quote, offensive and derogatory language on social media. This was on Instagram. Apparently they were homophobic and misogynistic language. So they've certainly set the precedent here for disciplining their star players if they say things that they find objectionable. I guess the question is, what does the NBA find objectionable and what are they okay with?
Well, that's what I'm waiting to hear the response, because this is bigotry against the men and women who protect not only Mr. James, they protect NBA players throughout this country in their arenas where they play. And so I want to see if he's going to be held to the same standard, because it is an act of bigotry by LeBron James against police officers throughout the country.
Yeah, and it puts a lot of us in a really, horrific position, because if we do love the sport of basketball and we love the NBA, since it is probably the highest level of athletic achievement for that sport, it pains me to actually have to participate in enriching people who are so derogatory and offensive to people that I care very much about, and that is the men and women of the police departments all across this country. I know you're not necessarily calling for a boycott, but what do you believe Angelenos should do? If we love our Lakers, we want to root for them in the playoffs, but now, we got this guy speaking on our behalf, wearing our jersey.
Well, you know what? I chose after the George Floyd incident, when the NBA in particular were calling out cops across the country. Their broadcasters were. I shut the NBA off a year ago. So that's a personal choice by listeners or people that listen to your show. I personally have turned them off. I will not listen to them because I can't stand the rhetoric. I love NBA basketball, but I can't stand the rhetoric on commercials, and I just can't stand it. It drives me nuts, and it makes me upset.
Yeah, but you don't start threatening people on Twitter because you're upset. I guess that's the difference between you, Craig Lally, and LeBron James. Also, and let's face it, I mean, the NBA, by sending this to the commissioner of the NBA, you're sort of, going over the heads of the owners of the Lakers or the management of the Lakers, because this really is about the league and the culture in the league and whether the league encourages this kind of behavior, because God knows the league is enriching all of these people, and LeBron gets plenty of rewards for his behavior, but hardly anybody actually willing to step up and confront him over this and say, no, this is wrong. So I appreciate you doing it.
Well, and one of the rewards is, Larry, he gets protection from LA police officers at Staples Center. He gets protection from LA police officers at his residence on and off duty. So that's another reward he gets.
Yeah. Yep, you're right, and that is the basest hypocrisy of all. I'm glad you called them out in the letter too, Craig. Well, I've got you. I'd love to sort of revisit. You were a regular guest during the onset of the George Floyd situation. You were probably the first high-profile representative of police officers, considering you're the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League, to say, yeah, what I'm seeing in this video is wrong. What I'm seeing in this video does not stand up to the training and the standards of LAPD. In fact, I remember you saying on this show, what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis would not happen in Los Angeles. So I'd love for you to sort of reflect on how this trial went and how the verdict came down. And then I've got a follow-up in terms of where things stand right now with the LAPD. But go ahead and sort of reflect on this if you could.
Well, to be honest with you, Larry, I didn't watch a lot of the actual jury trial itself. I didn't watch any of it, to be honest with you, because I've been so busy. I wasn't obviously surprised by the outcome. Like you said earlier, we were outraged at what we saw and everybody saw. And you're right, that wouldn't happen in L.A. because our defense would never be that that's what we're trained to do. And I think that was part of the defense, that's what he was trained to do. So it's just really strange for us because that incident happened nowhere near the state of California or the city of Los Angeles. But, some people got to paint the broad brush that, all cops are bad. Look at what happened in Minnesota, or name your city or state. And that's part of the problem with law enforcement is we have approximately a million police officers across the country, a million. And situations like George Floyd are very, very, very infrequent. And in the city of LA, we handle 1 million radio calls a year, 1 million calls for service. This is the community calling us for help. And so it's very frustrating that incidents like this get painted not only in LA or the state of California, but across the country. And that's the frustrating part.
And it is frustrating. And by the way, it needs to be noted, and it's really overlooked, that there was no evidence presented in this trial that Officer Chauvin or any of the officers there acted out of any racial animus. I mean, you said, again, I go back to our first interview, you said this is bad policing. I don't, it doesn't matter what the motivation is, whether there's racism involved. This is just bad policing and would not happen in Los Angeles. And that's what the trial came out. Even Keith Ellison, the pretty radical state's attorney general in Minnesota, he presented his evidence and findings after their investigation. They said, we can't find anything here that has anything to do with race. It was just bad policing. And that's important because people are holding up this Derek Chauvin case not as an example of a police officer who did something wrong, had to face the consequences, and now is facing those consequences. No, they're saying, aha, you see, there's racism in the police departments, and there's literally no evidence to show that in this case.
And I look at it, the system works, okay? You're right, there was no evidence of race being involved in this incident, but the system worked. The former officer was brought to court, found guilty, and basically from the evidence that was given at the trial by 12 jurors. I mean, the system works, and that's it. At the end of the day, though, isn't that what people want to happen?
Let me bring this back then in our final moments, Craig Lally. Our guest is Craig Lally. He's the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Back to LAPD. Because the other thing that many of us found disturbing, and I certainly found disturbing with regard to the Derek Chauvin incident and the George Floyd incident, is that you had several other police officers on the scene not intervening. So, and this I think is critically important for people to know. What are the protocols right now in LAPD in terms of the ability and the openness for fellow police officers to either intervene in an incident or after the fact to sort of be a whistleblower? You know, this is a constant refrain, is that cops need to also police their own. Cops need to call out those bad cops. What are the mechanisms in place right now for that to happen?
Well, we have a duty to intervene. That basically, if we don't intervene in a situation, like, for example, the George Floyd incident, the officer will be brought up on charges at a board of rights and probably terminated. So we have a system in place for that. So every officer on LAPD knows that. So that's in the policy. So
how often is that mechanism triggered? I mean, is this a common occurrence? Is it rare? Because people see your organization, Craig Lally, and they hear, "Oh, Los Angeles Police Protective League." See the cops police or protect their own. You just circle the wagons. That's the perception: is that you circle the wagons and you protect all cops, even the bad ones.
Well, no, we don't. Even police officers who do some pretty evil things, they're allowed a day in court, and so they're allowed representation no matter what they do for a living, whether they're a police officer, whether they're a doctor, whether they're a nurse, a firefighter. They deserve their day in court, and that's what we provide. So that's part of our duty to make sure they get a fair and impartial tribunal, whatever that tribunal is.
Yes,
that's the main goal of us.
Even gang members are allowed that, by the way, and that's how I want it to be. No, everyone should have proper representation in their day in court.
Charles Manson got his day in court.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, the Hillside Strangler got his day in court with representation.
Yeah. Actually, I said one last thing, but now I've really got one last thing. I'd love for you to comment on this news that we're seeing out of Sacramento, that 76,000 felons are going to be put back on the street here. Including violent felons and repeat offenders. I mean, again, this is more burden on your men and women who are trying to protect and serve, and now you've got hardened criminals coming right back out before they've served their sentences.
Yeah, and that's it's really a problem with the people that live in the state of California. You're letting all these criminals out with basically no out on the street, and in L.A. County we got our own problems with our DA out here. So even if they get caught again doing a heinous crime, who's to say what their sentence is going to be, or what kind of sentence they're going to try to get if they commit further felonies and murders? And all I know is in L.A. City right now, our shootings and murders are off the charts. I mean, I think we're up, 70% in homicides and almost the same in shootings throughout the city of Los Angeles, not just in certain areas. And that's my biggest worry is it's just getting very, very violent out there. And if we don't have a mechanism in place to put bad people in jail for a substantial time, it's just going to create chaos.
Yep. It's almost like that's what they want sometimes. Hopefully that's not the case. They're just misguided. We got to leave it there. Craig Lally, always great. Thank you. I love that you field my questions, and I appreciate you coming here. And let us know what you hear from the NBA, please.
Absolutely, Larry. Thanks for letting me on your show. Take care.
Always. Larry O'Connor Show, KABC.